This is where devotion meets the beast. A space for honest conversation where growth isn't something we perform, but something that we live. Each week we come together in curiosity, devotion, and a willingness to sit with both the sacred and the messy parts of being human. Wherever you're listening from, take a deep exhale and settle in. This is where devotion meets the beast. Hello!
Hello.
Episode 2, very exciting. I know that our plan is usually to pull a card and discuss said card, but last week you said something really profound and I actually feel like it was just too good not to bring it on the podcast. So we were discussing some of the health concerns I've been having and you asked the question, am I tired or am I in grief? And I just think that was incredible because I have been so tired and I've been going through all of these motions of why am I so tired? Why am I exhausted? Why am I napping? I'm 31 years old, but I get to the end of my day and I need to have a nap or lay down, and obviously my nervous system is not in the state that it should be in. But yeah, I really wanted to lean into that question and get you to share a bit more about what you meant by that.
Yeah, it's a good conversation to really sit with our body and our feelings and what is driving our nervous system response, which fight, flight, freeze, and mixed in with tiredness, illnesses, chronic fatigues, really growing exponentially statistically. And in my own personal experience too, like you were just saying, you've been tired. Like I have a history of tiredness. Like obviously, in my early 20s, I got glandular fever, and you're supposed to be over it in 6 months back then, many decades ago, and I had it for 18 months. If I get sick, I get really tired. But I also have noticed that I get tired, very tired. And sometimes I'm not ill with the virus, but I take myself to bed. And sometimes I can be there for 2 or 3 days. And I'm learning that when I'm in that deep tiredness and I speak more into what is in the tiredness, I can really feel sadness and grief. And then when I start to give a narrative through journal writing or EFT tapping, or even sometimes, talking with a friend and getting their feedback, I realize actually there's a big conversation of sadness and grief in me that I have yet to give airtime to. And when I finally do give it that attention, not just attention, but affection, I've really learned not to be so critical on myself when I am tired, and I should have more energy. Look at the people out in the world doing so much more, and there are really a lot of people working longer hours than me and doing a lot more. So I've always thought I'm weak, but I really understand more and more in coming from kindness and love that actually I'm carrying sadness and grief, and it may be to my immediate situation or circumstances in my life, and other times I feel like it's that inherited grief that we carry, and that too needs to be spoken from. Yeah, that's how I see it these days. Yeah,
That's amazing.
does that resonate with you?
Yeah, definitely. I don't know, it's funny. I was thinking about this question all week actually, and yeah, it was a matter of it's as simple sometimes as just being tired for no reason, or thinking there's no reason, and like you said, being hard on myself, or people questioning me, or especially in my work, I might get to a Friday and I'm on a weekly call with my boss, and she'll say how are you, and I'm actually really tired, and she'll be like, why? What's been going on? There's just this narrative that we've been like conditioned to believe that you shouldn't be tired unless you have a reason to be tired. And most of like the reasons that people like believe or, you know, would actually give value to are like external reasons, like if you just ran a marathon or if you just worked a night shift maybe, or, you know, like all these massive things that like obviously and clearly throw out your nervous system. But sometimes it's so much deeper than that, and I guess why it landed for me was like at the chronic illness stage. I feel like every second person is dealing with some sort of health concern, and you know, we're being treated, and thankfully we have access to, you know, natural medicine remedies and things, so we're not putting pharmaceuticals in our bodies. But still, when you think about it, it's like you have this, you know, these chronic illnesses, and then you're spending all of this money to try and fix it at a, you know, at like a medicine science level. But sometimes it can just be purely based on the fact that I'm in a job that I don't love, or I just lost a friend. When you talk about grief, people put a lot of, I don't know, like heaviness on the word, like, you know, they will only say grief if you lose a loved one or an end of a relationship. But grief can also come from a shift in identity, which is also a really positive thing. And I guess that's part of what I've been experiencing too. And your shift in identity is, you know, you're growing, you're healing. But as part of that, you may lose some friendships, and you may lose relationships, and you may decide that you want to leave your job and have to start something completely new. And grief is in like all of these places, but it's like everyone's too scared, so scared to talk about it, that we just suppress it and then say we're tired.
Yeah. Well, it is a very like go, go, go industrial revolution world, and work hours are definitely outside of that 9 to 5 window for many people who are employed. And a surprise, like I said, over the decades of work ethic and time, and how much more is put into work hours and less from family. Like, you know, that the dad would be home at 5 o'clock after work, not 7 or 8, or not seeing him to tuck you into bed, and or the mother, or parent. And it's really common, and actually statistically, again, women are more likely, like really high statistic, to suffer from a chronic illness of some sort, because we carry the emotional injury of family members, we carry it on behalf of our children, our partners. And so there really is a grief cycle inside that is necessary to meet. Like, I was thinking about grief and tiredness, and I was like, to me, instead of rejecting it and pushing through it and, you know, more stimulants of coffee and whatever people do, I want our listeners to be able to encourage and imagine, like, this is the devotion to meeting the beast. It's like, I want you to invite grief to your table, like you're having a cup of tea with grief. And if grief was at your table, and next to grief is tiredness, you know, what does grief have to say to you? What is the medicine? Like, there's medicine in the experience of grief. And yeah, we're not just of course there's grief of a lost one, and there's terrible griefs, and that's an obvious conversation to be having. But inviting it in nonetheless, because if we don't really attune to what it is we're sad or grieving, or what we're grieving on behalf of someone else, it will stay there. That visitor at our table will just keep turning up every day, and but it's sitting there, yearning to be seen, yearning for a conversation, yearning for some curiosity to explore why you're so tired and why there is grief. And I mean, I think about my own life, and I have been exceptionally tired. And like I said, there are days where I'll take myself to bed, and it's not like I've got a flu, but I am just exhausted and I need a lot of bed rest. And it's not like I've just run a marathon. And I'm a sensitive person. I feel emotions deeply. And that's just my way of processing and giving myself permission to rest. So I want our listeners to get out pen and paper or even draw an image. Like, what does grief look like to you? Is it a big, thick, heavy blob? Is it a big, tarry mess? Or does it have another shape or texture? And again, start to sort of be curious and go towards instead of being repelled.
I love that.
Yeah.
I think that's a big part of what the podcast is about. Devotion to the beast can sometimes just mean being curious about what's there. The beast is a could be pictured like a scary thing in the in the backdrop, like a silhouette of something. And what I really want this podcast to be about is being curious about what that is for you and for me and for everybody else. And being curious enough to move toward it so that you can actually move through it, because all the work that I've done is so much based around, my whole life I suppressed everything, and so that just built up within me so much that it was like infecting every part of my life. And I think people think I'm crazy sometimes, because something will happen and I'm like you, I'm also quite sensitive and attuned to what's going on around me, so I too need a lot of solitude to process. But if something happens, I give meaning to almost everything. Sometimes it is over the top, for sure. But I give meaning to everything because I'm curious, because I actually want to know, is this something that is impacting me and making my choices for me that I actually need to delve into and discover? Or is it just life and that's okay? But I honestly believe that everything that happens in your life, there's a lesson, there's a something. It's trying to teach you something about yourself. And grief is one that I've always been afraid of. That beast has been in my wardrobe for a long time. Slowly making it okay.
It's interesting because when you are in you made me think of when someone passes away and everyone, you're attended to some degree. I'm not saying everyone around you would say the right thing, but there's this support system that comes to you while you're in this grief. And yet there's people who have grief every day in the job that they're doing, the relationship that they're in, the child that might be suffering or not doing well at school, and it brings you grief. There's day-to-day, minute-to-minute grief about things not turning out as you wanted, as you perceived, as you think is fair or unfair. It's grief, and you don't have a support network system for that day-to-day grief. I mean, I believe, there's such a thing as called domestic depression, which is a grief. A lot of women who are at home aren't turned on by that, and they enter this sort of domestic depression, being home, maybe isolated, looking after one or more children. And so it's really about, what is it that is making me sad? I mean, a couple of years ago, I got quite sick and I was really unwell, and for months and months. And I was angry at myself, and I was angry at my body, and I was angry at my lungs that were sick. And I spent a lot of energy ruminating and feeling burdened about what I was missing out on. I had grief. I had a lot of grief. And then I realized that actually I need to be curious about why I am so much in grief on myself because I happen to be ill. And so I had to really explore the judgment and give myself permission to help release my grief of being even unwell and not good enough and fit enough. I had to do a lot of patient trust and go you're holding a little inner child, your baby itself, and just it's okay I give permission for you to be ill as opposed to feel grief about being ill, which is suffering of. I mean, that's just another example and another layer of how I instantly felt a lot of grief because things weren't going to plan. And so the suffering got elevated, and it was really, I had to be very disciplined and I did a lot of like positive conversation to myself. It's okay that you're sick for another day. It's okay. Instead of lying there, not just ill, but then ill with grief. And it's a double whammy.
Yeah.
And people who do lose loved ones, I mean, as a therapist, I see this a lot. And it still blows my mind how I've sat opposite clients and they have suffered some big griefs, big loss, like lost parents as young teenagers under the age of 10. And they did not get to express their grief. And so they have a lot of illnesses. They have sort of like what would be an undiagnosed depressive way of thinking and seeing and feeling the world. And their child at that age was never supported to have their grief cycle, their healthy grief cycle for the loss of a parent or a loved one. I mean, and so we have to go back and start to give permission and let that child access and finally speak of their grief and loss. And so that's not necessarily inherited grief. It's situational grief where it happened, but it froze. It never got away to be nourished or held. And of course, a lot of the stories that I hear, the parents, the adults are just bereft and they don't meet the needs of the children, and that their grief isn't necessarily managed, and so the child has got no hope, or they go into self-soothing the parent to support their nervous system at the cost of their own. And that's something that really needs addressing and a lot of support.
Yeah, I think it's so sad that like we don't learn the tools that we need to actually go through the healthy stress cycle. It actually is an amazing segue. I went to a nervous system workshop today, which was a lot just around like the basics of the nervous system, and I do know all of these things, but sometimes you forget the science behind them. And there was something that she said that really reminded me and fits really well with this episode. But she was talking about how we originally start with like a state activation of the nervous system, and that could be whatever, anxiety or grief even. And then what happens is that becomes a trauma because it's an unresolved imprint. We don't actually process that state activation. So then it just, instead of being processed and released out of our bodies, it just gets stored. And you think about like how much we go through as kids and then teenagers, and then you probably start learning about your nervous system around, I don't know, 18 for most people, probably wouldn't be much before that. And so it's like all of these experiences that have happened, all of these states, all of these things that have happened in your life that have caused you some sort of likely negative emotion just get stored in your body. And another word that people don't like to use, trauma, it just gets stored as trauma. And it is trauma. It could be something small. Your body still considers that as trauma. And I just think it's so sad that we don't get to learn this, like as simple as regulation tools, like something, being aware enough where something happens, and then like you were saying, being able to just go, hey, like something is inside me right now, it's alive, and choosing what works for me to move through this. Is it a 10 to 20 minute walk in nature? Is it putting your phone away and just having 10 minutes in silence? Is it journaling your thoughts before going and having a conversation with somebody? Maybe there was a confrontation. Like, it's like we suppress and we push everything down, or we react instead of taking a breath and going, hey, something's activated in me right now. What do I need? What does, what needs, obviously it's something that needs to be heard. So, yeah, I loved when you said instead of meeting that feeling with judgment or shame, you meet it with love and presence. I think that's like the key, like being present with the feeling and moving through it in a way that feels good for your nervous system.
Yeah, I remember actually like coming back to some clients definitely that had a heavy energy, a tired energy, and that couldn't necessarily grab where from. And again, an example of the I think this person was 8 or 9, and it was so profound. I mean, in the room, I can do gestalt therapy or something, but what's really powerful would be to like write a letter to the person that you lost. And because children, certainly in my era, they're encouraged not to go to a funeral, so they didn't even get the ritual of a funeral, let alone what they didn't get next. And write a letter to the person that you've lost. Have that goodbye. Express your pain to the people who remained and weren't holding you. And I've just seen miraculous shifts in their energy system and their capacity to have literally more energy in their day-to-day living. Not all of us, some of us, when I come back to in a marriage, or some of us feel trapped and, it's day-to-day grind. I'm not saying that that's an immediate fix either. But if you are at least honest and put light on what is it gives you the grief, and give love to that grief and just say, thank you, I hear you and I see you. Even that can move you out of that sort of grief malaise. I hope that offers some medicine to our listeners anyway.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I love that.
And, they can certainly contact us and give us their examples and stories about grief that they're still battling with, and we can, come back to them and talk to them about it. Because there's also that, get on, what is that English saying? Carry on, get on with it. It's Australian, it's get on with it. Get on with it.
Keep calm and carry on. Keep calm and
That's
carry
the one. Keep calm, carry on. I knew there was a logo or something.
It's a meme. It's going to live rent-free in my brain
for
the rest of my life.
That is literally going against. It's suppress the grief. Don't talk about it. Fake it till you make it, but you never can fake it till you make it. So,
yeah, which can feel really jolting for people who, like, there truly are some people who, on the other end of us, like, we are more sensitive, empathetic human beings, so things do impact us deeply. And I know there are some people that naturally they're not as affected by that sort of stuff. Of course, they'll still feel grief and sadness and all of those things, but they don't feel it so deeply in their entire body. And I think the whole keep calm and carry on thing, right? Like, so people like us, find that really difficult because we are so deeply impacted. Like, we need to move through things like that to function, literally. And then there are people, at the other end of the spectrum that can generally keep calm. They'll still have their moments where they need to process. But I guess the key is, like, for people like that, they just don't get as emotional about it. So I think there's, like, 2 levels of, human in that sense, and obviously everywhere in between. But there's the people who really need to, like, cry and scream and really, like, get that emotion out of ourselves. And then there's other people who are like, they can talk it out, they can journal it out, they don't have as strong a reaction, I feel. Do you find that in your practice?
But what I was thinking when you were talking was, like, again, our generational difference. I did grow up in a generation where you didn't talk about bad stuff. And this is what I have learnt, though, even in your generation, that injury continues to go on. Like, I'm still shocked that clients in your age group, and sometimes even younger, so like mid-20s, are not invited by their parents or carers to express their grief. I mean, it's not healed. It's not like as the it's not fixed simply by modernization and the world of self-help, which, is available. I'm still surprised that there's still generational prejudice towards grief and expressing it.
Yeah, I do feel like there was a big shift with my generation, and there would be a much bigger percentage of people who are doing the work and understand the impacts of things like grief. But I still wonder when we're going to feel that shift. Like I truly hope and believe that when I, have children, that yeah, I'm probably not going to be able to keep my shit together all the time, because let's be honest, when you're a parent, I know it's not that easy, but I think the beautiful part is, being able to have a reaction and then being able to meet that reaction with a apology, with a, how did this make you feel? Are you okay? Are you safe in your body? Like rather than what, we're used to as children, like you said, there's a fight and then there might be silence, or there might be some sort of reaction, and then everybody just moves on. Nobody says anything,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like that's what I hope, changes in my generation, is that we're able to open the gates for our children to feel everything and feel safe enough to speak to us about what they're experiencing, so that they can understand it better as well.
Yeah, I hope for that too. So yeah, just sort of like coming to a close, I feel like we need to stop looking at grief as being such a beast, and coming from a heart space that invites it in with the support to make it more comfortable and possible. And we're here for that, for everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. Like choosing devotion to growth and healing, all the beasts, but especially grief, because that's one of the heaviest.
It's one of the heaviest ones.
Beasts, yeah.
Yeah. And love, but don't forget, love can stand with grief.
Love and grief, oh my god, that's a whole nother conversation. But love and grief absolutely coexist, and so beautifully. I think we forget that sometimes.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Mel, for today, as always. Big hug.
You too. We're so honoured to have you here with us today. It's time now to take another deep exhale. Carry only what landed in your heart and leave the rest behind. Until next time, this is where devotion meets the beast.